handouts. One is on books on the Mass. Yeah, okay, thank you. These are books on the Mass. The second one is called 25 Classics of Catholic Spirituality. I recommend it. This is not meant to be done even in a couple of years. This is a lifetime list. There's 25 different Catholic classics on the spiritual life. So, and then also I'm going to mention this, so in case I forget, you might want to. This one you might want to jot down. You can write on that sheet that I just handed out to you, those sheets. But this is a very recent book. Just came out, I think, this fall, and it's written by a very prominent Dominican friar named Father Gregory Pine. Gregory Pine. He lives in Washington, D.C. He's part of what's called the Dominican House of Studies, and he's a very popular podcaster. This is a book he wrote. I would strongly recommend it to you. It's excellent. It's called Your Eucharistic Identity. Your Eucharistic Identity. Short title, published by Ignatius Press. Excellent book. Be a great gift for anybody at Christmas, for yourself. Very readable, but he really explains beautifully how you receive your identity through the Eucharist. You know, people today are so concerned about their identity politics, that sort of thing. Who am I? Who are we? Well, we are Christ's image and likeness, but we also find our identity in Christ, in the Eucharist. That's how we find out who we are. And he talks about that at length in a very beautiful way. So I'd strongly recommend this. Your Eucharistic Identity by Father Gregory Pine. P-I-N-E. Just like it sounds. Now, let me finish my course to the Mass. Then we're going to answer some questions. Okay, we stopped number 5, receiving Christ in the Eucharist with the heart of Mary. So ask Mary to help you receive the Eucharist. Every time you're at Mass, say, Mary, help me to receive your Son the way you did. Well, that would be the most perfect way. I mean, who received Jesus with greater devotion and greater faith and love than Mary did? No one. So just as a little mental note we take, Mary, help me to receive communion the way you did when you were on earth. Very simple prayer. As you're going up to kneel before Christ, to receive him, or Jenny, whatever you're doing, when you're on the way up to communion, just say a little prayer. 6, before receiving communion, in addition to asking Mary for her help to receive her Son in a worthwhile way, in a worthy way, I should say, offer your communion for certain purposes. You know, the communion with Christ is the closest you'll be to Christ this side of heaven. It's the closest you'll be to the beatific vision of God in heaven. This side of heaven is when you receive Holy Communion. That's the closest you'll ever be to God. If you had visions and locutions and trances and ecstasies and all these, what some of the saints had, that would be nothing compared to communion, because in communion you are actually receiving God. And all the ecstasies in the world are nothing like communion. So the closest you'll ever be to God is when you receive Holy Communion, this side of receiving in heaven. We have to realize that and take that in and think about it and then receive accordingly. So offer your communion for certain purposes. It could be, maybe you're offering communion for the sick and suffering you know, maybe for the conversion of someone in your life, maybe for your family, maybe for your friends, maybe for your parish, maybe for your country, maybe for the unborn, maybe for, the list is endless. But offer it for several intentions before you receive Christ. So as you're walking up to communion, you ask Mary to help you to receive her Son the way she did. Make a gesture of adoration, either kneeling, genuflecting, very careful sign of the cross, or profound bow. And then you offer your communion for certain purposes, for certain intentions, maybe for the souls in purgatory. Again, the list is pretty endless. But I think we should do that. That's the central moment of grace is communion. It's the central moment of grace in our lives. We have to make the best of it and really make it as rich as we can possibly make it. That's one way to do it. Maybe you have a son or a daughter who's left the church. What better way to receive communion than offer that communion for her or him to come back to the church? And then God can use that grace to start applying it to those persons. 7, after receiving communion, this is really key. After receiving Holy Communion, be sure to spend sufficient time in silent prayer, thanking God for this greatest of all gifts, himself. This is crucial. And this is where priests come in. The most important time at Mass after the consecration is the time after communion. That should be a time of thanksgiving and praying to God, adoring him, petitioning him, whatever the case might be. So make sure it's done properly. Make sure it's a thanksgiving and not a rush job. Now the priest can help in this. Too often the priests rush through this. This is the most important time of prayer that there can possibly be. There should be a time of silence, silent prayer. There's nothing wrong with communion hymns for a while, but then cut them off at a certain point and do an instrumental so people have time to pray. I think a lot of people don't even pray at all. They go back to the pew and they sing, and they don't know who they received when they leave church. Again, they need to be reminded. But if the priest would extend that time after communion, instead of making it a half a minute of silence, why don't you make it a minute, maybe 2 minutes? When you start seeing people getting antsy, then you know you're being effective. Then you know it. Seriously, I'm Father Don Calloway. I brought one of his books a lot. Some of you know who he is. I call him the Rosary Priest, that amazing conversion. There's a book he wrote most recently called 30 Days of Eucharistic Revival. It's the writings of Peter Julien Aymar, a great 19th century French Eucharistic saint. But there's one passage in here where he's talking about the post-communion prayer. And he's saying it's the most important prayer of your entire life is right after you receive Holy Communion. Right after, that's the most important prayer you ever pray is right then, because now God's inside of you, you're inside of God, he's inside of your body, you're inside of his body and blood. I mean, you can't get any closer to God except at that moment. So wouldn't this be the most perfect time and most important time for real prayer? An extended prayer, not a quickie? And yet that's exactly what doesn't happen. And he says in this book, and I won't read the whole passage because it's kind of long, he said, could you imagine what would happen at a Mass on Sunday at a Catholic church? It's the end of the Mass, the priest is about to exit out the back door, whatever it is, and instead, he kneels down on the steps in front of the altar before the Blessed Sacrament, and he prays silently in thanksgiving for 3 or 4 or 5 straight minutes in silence. He said the people aren't going to leave because he hasn't left yet. They'd be kind of embarrassed to leave. He said, can you imagine the impact it would have on the people in the pews? They realize just who they received because he's praying before the Blessed Sacrament to the God who's inside of him. I think that's a great suggestion. Terrific. And then he can still leave after that. But that would, in a sense, kind of force the people in the pews again to pray more extensively in silence. And he says, too, in this passage, he says, who do you think loves it when you people rush out of church right away after Mass? Who do you think loves it? The devil. The devil loves it. You're not taking advantage of the most important moment of your day or of your life, really, and you're just rushing out. Well, in a matter of minutes, you're talking about the weather, and you have God inside of you. I mean, think about that. He says, you think the devil doesn't love it? He loves that. Because he knows how effective this would be if you really took advantage of it and really prayed in the way you should pray after you receive communion. And then when Mass is over, again, what's the rush? You can still meet with your friends afterwards, but why would people want to rush out of church? It's like you're rushing away from God. Why would you rush away from God? That makes no sense. It's again one of these bad habits we get into. It's like some people, they practically trample the priest trying to get out. It's like, why are you doing that? I mean, are you trying to get away from God or what? I mean, or are you just checking a box? I check the box, and I can leave. Too often people are just checking the box, and that's why they want to leave so fast. But if you really understand who you just received, who's inside of you, that you're like a walking tabernacle, which is what you are, and Christ is physically inside of you, physically now, at least 15 minutes. Ask a doctor how long does it take to digest a host. About 15, 20 minutes. He's physically inside of you. You are literally carrying God, just like Mary carried God for 9 months in the womb. How should we act if we know we're carrying God? If we're all walking around like walking tabernacles, shouldn't we act in a certain way? Shouldn't we be aware of who we just received and what we've just been doing? Again, I just say that as a way of heightening our own awareness. And then in a gentle, kind way. And again, I really go out of my way to not blame people. The people, I call it the people in the pews. Because it's not their fault in most cases. They just have to be instructed. If they're instructed in a kind way, a gentle way, a charitable way, many of them will come around. I would say most of them will come around. Because they just want some encouragement and some suggestions and some advice. So maybe you can get your priest to do that. If not for 5 minutes, how about 2 minutes? And we can work our way up to something a little more than that. But I really think it would have a great impact on the people in the pews. I don't think there's any question about it. They'd say, oh my gosh, yeah, I guess this is kind of important. I get somebody's inside of me that's pretty important. And then I think it's also important, as when Mass concludes, that we do try to maintain, and again, this is difficult today, I understand why, a reverential silence in church as much as possible. And when people come into church, they're usually pretty quiet, and I call it reverential silence. They maintain a silence because they know they're in the presence of God. But when they leave, suddenly they just forget where they are. And then they become, social butterflies in church. There's nothing wrong with saying hello to somebody as you're walking out of church, or maybe spending a minute or two saying something to somebody, but don't carry on like a long dialogue with someone for 10, 15 minutes in front of the Blessed Sacrament. I mean, come on. He's still there. He hasn't left. And just the matter of awareness. It's just an awareness. That's all it is. And I think it would be really helpful if our clergy would remind people of that. Instead of engaging with them. Instead they don't join them, correct them. And say, I'm not trying to be mean to you. I'm just trying to, gently say, I think we should carry on this conversation about the meat market out here in the hallway and not here in front of the sacrament. It's things like that. And then, of course, we go out into the world. I didn't get to that today. It would take me too long. I was going to go through, maybe next time we'll do this, go through the Mass, not quite like this, but go through the Mass and how you can, in a practical way, pray the Mass every step of the way. What to do. Maybe I'll save that one. I haven't got to that today, but I'll save that. But the most important thing when we leave church, as we enter the world, remember, ite missa est, go, you are sent. And so we go sent by Christ and you imitate Christ. The way you live the Mass is not just something you attend or even something you participate in, it's all that, but it's something you live. If the Mass is the center of our life, it's really the center of the universe, then how do we live the Mass? We live the Mass by imitating Christ. And imitating especially all of his virtues, his many, many virtues, but especially his charity, his love, his sacrificial, self-emptying love. That's how you live the Mass, to imitate the love of Christ in your own world. To bring the love of Christ to people that you encounter every day, no matter who they are. That's how you live the Mass. That's what we all should be. That should be a goal for all of us every time we attend Mass or participate in Mass. So I'm going to end there because I know people have some questions. And shoot, go after me. Questions, anything at all? I say shoot, not literally. I'll duck. I got a podium up here. Anything at all? Yes?
So you mentioned about a gesture of adoration.
Yes.
Before communion. What about doing the sign of the cross after receiving?
That, I think you could do both. I think it's traditional for people to, after they receive Christ, to make the sign of the cross, which I think is a beautiful gesture. Yeah, I think both would be important. Or if you, let's say when you went up to communion, you genuflected, and then when you received, you made a sign of the cross that way. Or let's say you're elderly, and you literally can't genuflect or maybe fall over. That's understandable. I mean, we have to be reasonable about these things. Then you could make the sign of the cross before and after. But I think it should be you're not trying to show off, you're not trying to let people, look at me, No, it's not that, it's for him, it's not for the people. But you're showing by your body language. You see, that's what we can talk all we want about Eucharistic revival. I can give you the most eloquent talk on the Eucharist, but if I undercut it by what we do in church, by our actions and by our gestures and by our rituals, then what have you accomplished? You haven't accomplished anything. I mean, I mentioned last time, before we ended today, there are so many things that have been done in the last 50, 60 years under the auspices of Vatican II, or Vatican Council II, that have nothing to do with the council. They really had nothing to do with the council. They were clearly imposed on the church by certain people who are, I have to call them what they are, bad actors. Some were theologians, some were bishops, some were even cardinals, some were priests, bishops, parishes, dioceses. It's just a fact. And one day it'll all be known. And I can prove that to you very easily. I'll just give you a couple examples. Run along. These are the documents of Vatican II, okay? They're collecting dust on most people's desks or bookshelves, but we should actually read them. But the document on liturgy, called Sacrosanctum Concilium in Latin. Again, Latin is the language of the church, so all the official documents are in Latin, right? Okay. What did the council actually say about Latin? Most Catholics think, well, they just banished that. They'd get rid of it. No, they didn't. Not at all. Quite the opposite. This is from the document right here. I got it in my hands. It says the following. Paragraph 36 from the document. It was written in 1964. It says, the use of Latin language with due respect to a particular law is to be preserved in the Latin rites. That's us, Latin rites. But since the use of the vernacular, that would be the language of the people, vernacular, whether in the Mass, administration of sacraments, or in other parts of liturgy, may frequently be of great advantage to the people, a wider use may be made of it, especially in readings, directives, and some prayers and chants. Regulations governing this will be given separately in subsequent chapters. What he's saying is that what the council intended was this. Language of the church remains Latin. So all the official, everything's in Latin. The catechism is in Latin. All the documents are in Latin. Canon law is in Latin. It's all, the official document. What it's saying is that what Vatican II wanted to do is this. Okay, we want certain parts of the Mass to be in English or Spanish, whatever language it may be. Especially like the readings so you understand them. When they do the reading from St. Paul or the reading from the Old Testament, you understand it because it's in your language. Or some of the other prayers, Mass, be in English. But we still keep using Latin. What's happened is Latin has been banished. Even though right here the council just says, use Latin. So who are the liars here? You can tell us to your priest sometime and read it to them. Say, wait a minute, where's the Latin? I guess you're against the Vatican II. If you never use Latin, you're against Vatican II. As simple as that. Now, people, because they don't understand this, again, the people in the pews, when the priest starts using Latin, they think, oh, gee, he's going back to, the Middle Ages or something. No, he's not. He's actually following the document. He's actually following the document where he's supposed to. Now, what would be the ideal? This is what it should be. The Mass can be primarily in English. However, certain parts should always be in Latin. And for a while, it'll take people a while to get used to this. You have a plastic card in your pew. One side the Latin, the other side the English. Very simple. In a matter of months, you can memorize it. I think the Sanctus should be in Latin. The Agnus Dei should be in Latin. The Credo should be in Latin. The Gloria should be in Latin. The Pater Noster. Those prayers should remain in Latin, and the rest can be in English. It's not the Latin Mass in its totality, like you'd have at the traditional Latin Mass, but it's Latin and English. That's what the bishops intended at Vatican II. That was their intention. It was never accomplished, and now you have some bishops saying, in some parts of the country and the world, saying, oh, we have to banish Latin completely. Bring this up to them and see what they say. See what they say. See how they weasel their way out of this. It's as plain as English. You can't get any plainer. Another thing, sacred music. I've made that mark as well here. Same document, Vatican II. He's talking about the authors, the bishops who wrote this, are talking about the importance of sacred music. Let me find this quickly. Oh, here we go. He's talking about the great treasury of sacred music we have in the church. Well, the church has a remarkable treasury of music, beautiful music, down through the centuries. Well, much of it's in Latin. In fact, the best of it's in Latin. It's been banished. It's gone. It's like cutting yourself off at your roots. You say, I don't have any past, I don't have any heritage, I'm just cutting myself off. That's what we've done in large part. Guess what the document says? Just the opposite. It says, the church recognizes Gregorian chant as being specifically suited to Roman liturgy. Therefore, other things being equal, it should be given pride of place in all liturgical services. What's happened to it? It's disappeared. The document says the opposite. See what I'm saying? I'm saying people have used this council to push their own agenda and not follow the actual document. There's something about, and then people can be trained, even children can be trained to sing Gregorian chant. It's the greatest treasure of the church. When you hear Gregorian chant, you know it's from heaven. You don't have to make it holy. It is holy. Just listen to it. It has intrinsic beauty about it that's heavenly. It's so appropriate for Mass. It's so appropriate. You can't get a more appropriate music. And yet notice it says, Vatican says it should have pride of place. In some places, though, when you try to bring in Gregorian chant, they'll say, oh, you can't use that. You can't use that. Why not? Right there it is. I think part of it is educating people, just educating them in the truth. This is the truth. Like I say, one day we'll finally follow the document. Maybe we'll all be gone by then. But one day they'll finally actually follow what the bishop said. They didn't say banish all this stuff. The same with all these traditions of the church. You know, after the council, a lot of churches were wrecked. They got rid of all the images, sacred images, statues, imagery. That's actually a heresy. That's called iconoclasm. The church condemned it in the 8th century. You cannot destroy sacred images. Those images represent the saints or Mary or Joseph, or you can't destroy them. That's a sin. It's a heresy. And yet, a lot of churches were denuded. They were stripped of all this stuff. Who was the last person who did that? The Protestants during the revolt. They went into the Catholic Church and destroyed this because they didn't believe in any of that stuff. Why would we do this to ourselves? Would it make any sense at all? It makes no sense. So I'm just trying to gently remind us of the truth that we have been, frankly, deprived of. We've been deprived of it. We deserve to know the truth. Yeah, go ahead.
What did Vatican II say about creationism?
I didn't specifically deal with creationism. If by creationism you mean the kind of Protestant approach to Scripture and science, or what do you mean by that?
God create the world as the Bible says, or was there some kind of...
No. Good question. It does, in a couple of documents it alludes to modern science, but not quite that specifically. But I can just tell you what the church does teach. If by creationism you mean with the God's the creator of the universe and all the elements, yeah, we certainly believe that. Now, how God did that's another question. I think it's a mistake when you read the Bible like it's a science book. It's not a science book. It's not meant to be a science book. And yet some people read it. I mean, Protestants, at least some Protestants, often read it like it's a science book. On the first day, God made this. And the second day, they think it's a 24-hour day. Well, guess what? God didn't make the sun until the 4th day. Can you have a 24-hour day without a sun? No. So it doesn't mean day in the sense of 24 hours. It means something else. It means a period of time. What Genesis really means is there's an order to creation. God made things in an orderly fashion. And there's never any conflict between religion and science, between the Catholic Church and science. What about something like evolution? Now, Darwin's theory is not only bad science, it's also very much in conflict with good theology. Let's say, though, it's just evolution in general. Could God have created all things in some evolutionary manner? Sure, he could have. He's still at the source of it. He's still guiding it. We're still investigating that. The church has always said that evolution is a theory, not a fact. It's a theory that we're still open to, provided certain parameters are met. But no, there's never any conflict between the two of them. Unfortunately, I think sometimes non-Catholics, and sometimes Catholics too, they latch on to a false science and they really make the faith look kind of foolish. But the church is not foolish about this. The church is very reasonable. And we say, God could have created things in a way that is very mysterious and over a long period of time. And he could have used, there are certain limits. Let's assume for the sake of argument that God created the first man, Adam, and then the first woman, through some sort of evolutionary process. He could not have created the soul of man that way. The body could have been formed in a sort of gradual way, but the body of Adam and Eve and the soul of Adam and Eve have to have been created by God himself in a direct way, infused into the body at some point. Pius XII, back in 1950, he wrote an encyclical on this very subject. He said, as long as you believe that God's in charge and that the body could evolve but not the soul, because the soul has no parts, it can't evolve. As long as you believe that, and that you believe we all came from one pair of parents, not many, Adam and Eve in this case, because otherwise you couldn't have original sin. Say some would have original sin, some wouldn't. Let's say you say, well, there are many different couples at the beginning. No, there weren't. There have to have been only one couple. If you believe those things, you can entertain the theory of evolution. You can say, well, that's a possibility. It's not a fact. Darwin's theory is for sure out, because it omits God, is totally materialistic, it denies the soul, and, not surprising, it's now bad science. It's being rejected by a lot of good scientists who are not even believers. They say Darwin's theory doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Darwin didn't know about the cell. The cell is an incredibly complex reality. Each one of us has billions of cells in our bodies, billions. One cell, mind you, one cell is as complex as New York City. So Darwin's theory does not fit the evolution of the body. It just doesn't. As science, it's been rejected for a long time by good scientists. Why do people cling to it? Because it omits God. They're doing it for non-scientific reasons, for theological or philosophical reasons. But no, there's never any conflict between God or, let's say, faith and science and reason. They always work together as long as it's good science and good theology. But I think Protestants sometimes, especially the fundamentalists, sometimes get this mixed up because, again, they have no authority except themselves. Who determines this? Who is the ultimate authority? We believe the ultimate authority is the bishops in union with the Pope. The magisterium, we call it, because God gave them that authority. Whereas if you don't believe that, then it's just you and the Bible. I can believe what I want to believe, and I can make up what I want to make up. I always say that, when people argue for sola scriptura, Scripture's the only authority, they don't really mean that. They mean the real authority is me. I'm the authority. I get to decide. And that's exactly true. That's what it is. It's really not the Bible. It's really me. I get to decide what the Bible means. And then I can run with it. That's why you have over 50,000 Protestant denominations. They have no central authority. And God certainly doesn't want that. All of these different branches of what should be one church. I say very unapologetically, too. We share truths with our non-Catholic brethren, certainly truths. We believe in the same Christ. We believe in at least one of the same sacraments. They have baptism, not the other six. Although some have some sense of marriage as a sacrament. But there's so many things that we don't. Excuse me. That, we have to be proud of the fact that we believe that Christ only established one church. He did not establish a whole bunch of churches. There's only one true religion in the entire world. That's Catholicism. Every other one is deficient in some way in terms of truth. They don't have I always say they don't have the fullness of truth. They may have some truth, and depending on what they believe, they may have more truth than others. I mean, a faithful Methodist has more truth than, say, a Muslim or an Orthodox Jew, because they believe in Christ, they believe in the Bible, including the New Testament, etc. They believe in baptism, they believe in some of the teachings of Christ. So you can make a chart, start with the Catholic Church at the top and then kind of make arrows as to how close you are to the fullness of truth. But I think Catholics have to hear that more from the pulpit. Again, I've seen surveys done that are really quite alarming to me. I mean, they did surveys, let's say again, I'm not trying to pick on Vatican II, but I believe in Vatican II, if it's properly interpreted. It has not been properly interpreted, though, in many cases. But they did surveys before the council, and they asked Catholics in the pew, what do you think about these other religions? Overwhelmingly, they rejected them. Overwhelmingly. There's a sin called indifferentism, where you say, it doesn't really matter what religion you have, just follow something. They all lead to the same place anyway. God. No, they don't. That's not true. Not true at all. Yet many people believe in this indifferentism. That's what the church calls indifferent. You're indifferent to the truth, basically. Well, surveys are being done today, and guess what? Catholic attitudes have changed tremendously. Now, many Catholics, even most Catholics in some places, believe, it doesn't really matter what religion you belong to, whether you're Catholic or non-Catholic, or even if you're non-Christian. We all go to God somehow. That is very false and very dangerous. But it shows you what happens when things get watered down. People start to make up their own religion, if you want to call it that. And that's exactly what's happened. I've seen surveys, extensive surveys, where this is exactly what Catholics believe in the pews. Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Can you talk more about the communion rail? What happened to that?
Yeah, good question. If you read this document again, it says nothing about that. Not one word. Now, there were subsequent articles or documents were written sometimes by committees, etc., that tried to push this sort of thing. And eventually they succeeded. I'll just tell you a quick history here. And that includes communion in the hand as well. This is also a novelty. It should never have happened. And I'll be personal with you. I think that until and unless the church returns to communion on the tongue, kneeling, there will be no Eucharistic revival in the church. It will not happen until that happens. And I'll tell you why.